Imagine waking up to find your grandmother's century-old roses poisoned, your family heirloom home engulfed in flames, and across the street, the smug HOA president sips her morning latte, convinced she's crushed you for good. But what she doesn't know? You're not just any homeowner. You're a federal judge, and she just declared war on the wrong family. Before we dive in, comment below which country you're watching from, because this isn't just a neighborhood feud. This is the story of how one arrogant HOA tried to erase my family's legacy and how I turned their empire into ashes. That dawn felt ordinary, almost too ordinary, as I sat rocking on my grandmother's porch swing, the wood creaking softly beneath me. A mug of dark roast steamed in my hand, and the rising sun painted the sky peach and lavender over the green-trimmed eaves of our craftsman home. For a brief, fleeting moment, life still felt peaceful. Then I saw her. Marcy Caldwell, HOA president, self-proclaimed queen of Elmwood Lane. She strutted up the sidewalk in designer heels, every step clicking with manufactured authority. In her manicured hand was an envelope stamped with the HOA seal. She slid it into my mailbox with exaggerated flourish, then raised her phone and snapped pictures of my wildflower borders as though they were a crime scene. "This is your final notice," she purred into the phone, loud enough for me to hear. Curiosity tugged at me. I plucked the glossy brochure from the box. In bold letters, "Join the Elmwood Lane HOA. $6,500 initiation fee plus $400 monthly dues. Non-compliance will result in enforcement measures." Attached was a list of mandatory modifications. Strip the sage green siding. Tear out Grandma's heirloom roses. Remove the vintage wind chimes that had sung on this porch for 4 generations. It was extortion wrapped in letterhead. That evening, I walked across the street and rang Marcy's doorbell. It chimed, predictably, the opening riff of Eye of the Tiger. Subtlety was not her strong suit. She opened the door draped in a captain's sash, a glass of Chardonnay in hand. "Oh, Judge Carlisle," she cooed, as though mocking my title. "What a surprise!" I held out the brochure. "I've reviewed your invitation," I said evenly, "but my family's owned this house since 1920. We'll be preserving its character, not rewriting it." Her smile thinned. "That's not optional." I raised an eyebrow. "My deed predates your covenant. I am under no obligation to join your HOA." Her eyes narrowed, the mask slipping. "You'll regret this." Neighbors' blinds twitched, silent witnesses. The newcomers she had recruited into her fold. I could feel their eyes on me. As I walked back to my porch, the wind chimes swayed softly, singing their defiance. I didn't know it then, but this was only Act 1. The very next morning, I woke to Marcy's shrill voice outside my window. "Look at that hideous green trim!" I pulled the curtains back just enough to see her leading a parade of HOA loyalists with clipboards in hand like prosecutors ready to indict. They photographed my roses, measured my grass, 11.2 inches, taped bright orange violation notices to my door. Every notice was more absurd than the last. Unapproved driveway stones, non-regulation bird feeders, dangerous wind chimes. I countered each with calm precision. Preservation certificates, property line surveys, code exemptions. I thought logic would tame them. I was wrong. They escalated. Landscapers arrived at dawn, claiming the HOA had scheduled a safety revamp of my garden. HOA meetings were staged in my driveway, ensuring passers-by saw me branded the neighborhood pariah. But nothing compared to what I discovered on my security cameras one night. 2 board members skulking through my yard at midnight with chemical sprayers strapped to their backs. They doused my grandmother's rose bushes, the very roses my grandfather had planted after returning from the war. By morning, the bushes were blackened husks. Grief burned hotter than anger. Those roses weren't just plants. They were history, memory, legacy, and Marcy had killed them with a smirk. I decided it was time to fight back. I combed through county records, piecing together a chilling puzzle. Every homeowner who had refused the Elmwood HOA had met a suspicious fate: a kitchen fire, an accidental collapse, mysterious electrical issues. The aftermath was always the same. The family sold at a fraction of market value to shell companies linked to Marcy's brother-in-law. It wasn't a neighborhood association. It was organized crime in cardigans. Then came the breaking point. A phone call jolted me awake. "Your Honor, your house, it's on fire." 15 minutes later, I arrived to find my beloved craftsman engulfed in flames. The porch swing collapsed in a shower of sparks. The roof caved in. And there, across the street, Marcy stood with her latte, applauding as though she was watching fireworks. Fire Chief Alvarez muttered something about old wiring, an accident, but I knew better. My annual inspections had passed flawlessly. My cameras had been disabled at exactly 3 a.m., 4 hours before ignition. This was no accident. They hadn't just destroyed my house, they'd tried to erase my family's century-old legacy. As the ashes cooled, so did my hesitation. I made 3 calls: to the FBI, to the state attorney's public corruption unit, and to my most trusted private investigator. We dug deeper. Property records, bank ledgers, insurance reports. A decade of Elmwood accidents traced back to Marcy's empire. Each fire, each collapse, each forced sale was another piece of her monopoly. I wired the HOA treasurer's car and recorded her confessing to cooking the books. Funds laundered through shell companies, payoffs to inspectors, bribes to code enforcement. Marcy had built an empire of ashes, and she'd made the fatal mistake of targeting a federal judge. The HOA announced an emergency meeting at the community center. Perfect. When Marcy strutted in, coffee mug in hand, she looked ready to crown herself Queen of Elmwood once again. But this time, the tables had turned. I stood, buttoned my robe, and announced, "I am Judge Marcus Carlisle, presiding over United States v. Caldwell et al., a federal RICO and arson conspiracy case." Gasps rippled across the room. FBI agents poured in, serving warrants. Marcy's husband, the retired fire marshal who had ruled every blaze accidental, bolted for the exit but was tackled to the floor. I laid out the evidence like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. Text messages plotting fires, bank transfers to shell companies, midnight surveillance of arson in progress, false inspection reports signed in exchange for bribes. Marcy's smirk finally cracked. For the first time, she realized the game was over. 6 months later, I sat once again on my porch swing, newly rebuilt, green trim restored, roses replanted from heirloom cuttings I'd saved. The wind chimes sang softly in the breeze. Marcy and her cronies, convicted on federal RICO charges, their assets seized, their empire dismantled. Elmwood Lane was reborn, not as an HOA dictatorship, but as a true neighborhood. Neighbors shared tools instead of threats. Meetings were barbecues, not tribunals. They thought burning down my past would bury me. Instead, they forged the toughest case of my career and reminded everyone that true justice doesn't come from fear, but from resilience. Sometimes the best justice is watching a phoenix rise from the ashes.